Coaching as Benevolence, a podcast for people who are curious about using coaching for self-development. I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings Grief and Loss Coaching.
And I'm Shawn with Michelle Sage Place Positive Intelligence Coaching. Today we're looking at prompt 6 in the third section of our guided journal, Coaching Nuggets of Wisdom to Inspire, Explore, Act, Flourish, a guided journal to live your best life. We're in the Act section, and this prompt is about gratitude and appreciation. So it's a great way to create your best life. So I'm going to go ahead and read the prompt. Then Eryn and I will talk about the prompt as we do organically, see what comes up, and we'll end with a call to action for our listeners. So I will begin. Find what works for you to embody gratitude and appreciation. Gratitude and appreciation grow out of love and intention. They are meant to be shared, not forced or fake. They bring seeds of hope to ourselves and others. Draw on appreciation and gratitude intentionally and heartfeltly. What brings you gratitude? Who brings you gratitude? How do you share that with others? What do you appreciate in your life right now? Who do you appreciate? Why? What is something you can add to your week to embody gratitude and appreciation? I'm always a fan of pivoting and talking about gratitude and appreciation because I think it's easy when you're busy and when you have a lot going on to skip that part. And also, I think it's a really fast way to shift your mood. If you can go from just, going through the to-do list, going through ticking off, boxes, to just stopping and appreciating the things that are working, the things that bring you joy, the things that give you hope, or just mundane things like, a nice cup of your favorite beverage, or time to spend with your family. We're just finishing up the weekend here as we're recording this episode. And often on weekends, it's a great time to relax and to reconnect with the things that matter in your life, and to kind of step out of that daily grind or that routine of the week and take some time for rest and rejuvenation and relaxation and restoration. So I think that is something to also to appreciate and to recognize in your life, and find that time to feel that the feelings of gratitude, the warmth of gratitude, the lightness of gratitude and appreciation. I want to look at the first line. Find what works for you to embody gratitude and appreciation. So when we're looking at the word embody, what does that look like? And we can embody something. And so when I think about embody, I think how we show up, how we move, how we interact with others, that's how we can embody. So when we think about embodying gratitude and appreciation, we go to the second line, which is that gratitude and appreciation grow out of love and intention. And I would say definitely that gratitude and appreciation are the children of love, because when we think about things that we appreciate, that in itself is a positive feeling. And it's also looking at life through I would say the lens of love, because love is about the things that are beautiful, or the things that, add to our life and that kind of thing. So I'm thinking about how those two come from love. And then intention is really important too, because it's easy to take for granted the things that are going well. It's easy to take for granted the things that we like, or the things that bring us joy. As we mentioned in the last prompt, when we talked about looking at things that are going well, we as humans, our brain, it's wired for novelty. It's wired for paying attention to the things that aren't working, the things that are standing out. And so often when things are working, when things are good, we have a tendency to not notice them. So I think that's why intention is part of this prompt. So when we have love and intention, then we're inviting, we're allowing gratitude and appreciation. This brings us to they are meant to be shared, not forced or fake. So when I think about forced or fake, I'm thinking that is something that's like a pushing against, or it's something that requires effort. Whereas when I'm looking at love and intention, I'm seeing a more receptive, a more kind of opening up to and allowing. Those are the things that are coming up for me. Eryn, what's coming up for you?
Thanks, LaShawn. I love everything that you shared and the way that you framed your understanding of the first sentence and then bringing that into love and intention. And when you said gratitude and appreciation are the children of love, and you really kind of started to circle in on love as a concept, but even more than that, that was so beautiful. And it was a good reminder for me that one pathway to keeping that receptivity or the open-heartedness open, like you talked about, is through gratitude and appreciation that leads to love. And there's a lot that came up on my weekend with my kids and husband in terms of these themes. But two moments really stand out right now in terms of this weekend in particular as we were driving home today, because it came up. We were listening to the Hamilton soundtrack, the whole thing, right? And the concept of love came up. And so I just put it back to my 10-year-old and 7-year-old kids, like, well, what is love? Right. And my 7-year-old wittily responded, well, you know that one time when I told you what life is all about and you were like, wow, that's so mind blowing. And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, so you're going to tell me about what love is? She's like, no, I've already told you about what life is. I don't need it. So anyway, I just thought that was a really funny response. I was like,
you only get one profound conversation with me. So funny.
Yes, that is exactly where she drew the line. I'm just like, okay. And then my 10 is so funny. And then my 10-year-old was like, it's something in your heart that you really care about or someone you really care about. And I didn't push the conversation further because, there are other parts to our conversation that were happening. And then we had the music and different things. But I did want to circle back about the concept of love being active as well. And it's not just about, what's in your heart. And I love how you frame that because you show that it's active by saying gratitude and appreciation are the children of love. And so I think that could be a really good framing for me to take back and share in our conversation. And then the other thing, when we were out in the sun all day on Saturday, and I can't do that very well. I'm like, this is so hot. I fry. I'm like really gonna fry. And so I was sitting down beside the pool for a bit instead of being in the water with them. And again, my 7-year-old goes, when we kind of met back up after, it wasn't that long, what were you doing? And I was like, well, I was sitting there just naming things that I was grateful for in this space that I was at. And that really stuck with her because then at dinner Saturday night, she brings that up again. And she's like, Mom, I'm really thankful that you shared about your gratitude in doing that at the pool. That was really cool or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, like these things stand out to young people at a young age even, right? And so it's just interesting. These two concepts are coming up because by the end of the weekend where we're at now, I am internally in a different space. I'm tired. I'm worried about what the week will hold, all the different tasks, all those things. And so just being able to sit here and have this conversation is a really good reminder for me to root back into gratitude and appreciation and not from a forced way, like you said in that second sentence of the prompt, but truly just in a way to level the worry of what's ahead for the week. And I think that's where it takes us in the prompt then, because it says they bring seeds of hope to ourselves and others. Draw on appreciation and gratitude intentionally and heartfeltly. So sometimes it has to be really intentional to draw on gratitude or appreciation. And then that also, by doing this as an exercise and really holding space for that, it brings hope, right? It's hopeful for me to slow down with these concepts and breathe into them and know that the week will be okay. It's gonna be fine no matter what happens, right? And I think that gratitude and appreciation can give me that lightness and that pause. But like I've said in the past, these are things I've struggled with too. It's not like they come easier. It's not like it's, I'm even going back in my history. Like, did I have to really force it to really start to use it? And it's not that. It goes back to our podcast, I think just last week, where I said I had to admit, like, I just don't do this well. Right. And then that opened up the space for me to be open to these practices in a more meaningful way. So I guess one question that's coming up for me with gratitude and appreciation are, what are the differences? Have we talked about that in other podcasts? I don't know if we highlighted.
Yeah, we did talk about the difference between gratitude and appreciation, but I do think it would be good to bring it back up again.
Okay. My memory is not serving me so well, so hopefully.
Well, it was in one of our first seasons, so it's been a while since we've talked about the difference.
Too contradictory or too confusing. But so gratitude, I think, is the ability to look at something or someone and have a level of thankfulness that might be shared or that might be expressed that's not explicitly shared. And appreciation then is something that is, to me, more explicitly shared with someone, often, potentially, maybe not. And I think appreciation is a little more passive. Like, let's say I'm writing an email and, I appreciate the time you took on this. If I write that sentence versus I am so grateful for the time you took on this. If I sit down and write those two, and they wouldn't sound like that exactly, but if I were to write those two separately, I think for me, just personally, gratitude would have more meaning, maybe hold more emphasis than appreciation. So I'll just leave it there, LaShawn, and bump it back to you on your thoughts on gratitude and appreciation. And
I love how you brought in your weekend activities and how they're examples of embodying gratitude and appreciation, especially when you talked about sitting by the pool. And when your 7-year-old asked you, what were you doing? And you said, I was just, listing all the things thinking about all the things I was grateful for in that moment. That is intention right there. And also there's a sense of appreciation as well. So there's both gratitude and appreciation. For me, with gratitude feels more of, and to take your example, I'm grateful for the time you've taken and I appreciate the time you've taken. I feel like grateful is more of like maybe an intentional act, maybe, or an intentional acknowledgement with appreciation, if that makes any sense. But appreciation is more, like you said, Eryn, I think it is more passive, and I think it has more to do with an allowing. It is a more passive feeling to me. It's more about just kind of tapping into that feeling, that warm feeling, going back to what your 10-year-old said about it being something you care about in your heart or someone you care about. And so that appreciation seems to be something that emerges from the intentional acknowledgement of something that you care about, or something that maybe brings you joy, or something that adds value to your life, or that just brings some kind of pleasant feeling, something that I think about in terms of those two. And I also like how you talked about how it was your 7-year-old who then took what you embodied in the afternoon and brought it up again in the evening. So this again is showing how when we embody gratitude and appreciation, it can be contagious. People can take that and mirror that or show that same behavior, those same thoughts that you shared with your 7-year-old, and that was impactful for her. So she was able to bring back her appreciation of your sharing of your gratitude for things in the moment as you were sitting by the pool. So it also shows how our children often learn from us by example. Rarely do they learn from our words. They often learn from what we do. And this brings us back to that word in the prompt, embody. So what does that mean to embody gratitude and appreciation? I also wanted to go to that line, they bring seeds of hope to ourselves and others. And one of the things that came to my mind when you were talking, Eryn, about hope was when we intentionally look at the things that are going well or the things that evoke that beautiful feeling of lightness and pure positive energy, it reminds us that things are not all dark or things are not all going wrong. Because I think it's easy when you're in the grind, when you're in the thick of things, when, like you said, Eryn, you are in a space where you're, thinking about the week and what's coming up in the week, and maybe worry comes up, anxiety can come up. For me, it's also worry and anxiety about the week to come. But having this conversation about gratitude and appreciation is allowing me to bring balance to my perspective and my thinking of the week to come. Because there are things to look forward to, not just things that I dread or things that I'm kind of gearing up for. These are things that I can kind of soften around and allow to happen, as opposed to just kind of readying myself for some kind of confrontation or difficult conversation or something like that. So that is where that line, they bring seeds of hope to ourselves and others. That's where I'm thinking about gratitude and appreciation, the love and intentionality of that embodiment of gratitude and appreciation brings balance. It's not just hope, but it also is balance. So when we are focusing on the things that we are grateful for, when we're focusing on the people and the things that bring us joy, that bring us peace of mind, that bring us, feelings of belonging and acceptance and love, we can remind ourselves that although things can be challenging, there are also things that we can soften around and that we can allow in. So that's one thing that's coming. Those are several things that are coming up for me. And I want to go to those questions towards the end because there's a lot of questions there. And I'm thinking, this would be like the part of the prompt where this is the intentionality. So rather than just kind of be left with like kind of a nebulous feeling of appreciation or gratitude, we can bring it to things like, what brings you gratitude? So things that bring you gratitude, like being seen or spending time with family, things that are really bringing value to your life. So that's something that you can focus on and something that you can use as a guide for this journal. Of course, not every question needs to be answered, as some questions can resonate and others may not. So as with anything in this journal, it's really customize it to you and take what works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, then you just can set it aside. It allows you to kind of channel your thoughts or think about, what brings me gratitude. It could be gratitude for others or the feeling of gratitude that people have for you. So those are some things that I was thinking about. And then who brings you gratitude? That's another thing that you could think about in terms of the people in your life. How do you share that with others? that goes back to embody, and it also goes back to gratitude and appreciation. They are meant to be shared. And so that's one thing that that's kind of part of the way that I work with others is I make it a point to acknowledge and appreciate the things that people do that I find have added some value or have stuck out for me or struck me. Like, for example, if someone is just really good with other colleagues, and I see that and I'm like, that really helps with the overall collaborative spirit that we're trying to create. And so I'm going to go to that person. I'm going to say, I really appreciate how, professional you are. I really appreciate how willing you are to compromise with others, how you listen to others. And I think that also comes into how when we appreciate openly and we share that gratitude, it grows. Very similar to what Eryn did with your 7-year-old when you told your 7-year-old, I was thinking about things that I felt grateful for. That is shared and then it grows and it comes out again by your 7-year-old and then maybe others. She might say that to a friend who might be like, oh, that's really cool. I want to do that too. And it grows and it grows and it grows, which is another definition of appreciate in the financial sense. When things appreciate, they grow in value. And I think that's what happens when we share gratitude and appreciation is that good feeling, those connections that really bring us together as a people grow. So that's what I'm thinking about. Eryn, what's coming up for you? Are there any other questions in the prompt that you want to address?
Well, as you were talking, for me, it really started to become a little more clear about how maybe we're talking about appreciation versus gratitude. And I do think that generally, and this is very generally speaking, that maybe appreciation is this concept of I can appreciate something or someone, and I don't necessarily need to express that or share that. Maybe gratitude might be shared a bit more. Not always. Maybe I'm making a stretch here, but then I also feel like with appreciation that it's a little bit less pressure to feel forced, because appreciation may generally just flow a little bit easier. If you see something that you're like, whoa, that piece of artwork is phenomenal. And sometimes that's where that stops at appreciation. And here's where gratitude holds a lot of meaning then, right? Because it's like, I can look at this piece of art and say, I appreciate what this artist has done. And then maybe take that to this next level of, I'm grateful for being able to be in this space today and see expressed by letting the museum person know or writing the artist an email or whatever it may be, because that was something else you were talking about throughout that section of questions. Is it's meant to be shared. It's meant to be shared. You've brought it up a few times throughout. And I think we can't always do that, right? I still think that, gratitude and appreciation, you can express them and maybe not always share it, but I do think it takes it to that next level of really helping humans connect with one another in a meaningful way. And I think that that's really necessary. And, I'm looking inward and thinking, when is the last time that I expressed gratitude to an individual specifically, that might have just been seeing their art, like I said, or really liking the coffee that they made, or, who knows what it is, but it's a good reminder for me to go, instead of just saying that in my head or saying thank you, to go to the appreciation of what is, or what was created, or just the being, or simply the space, or whatever it may be. So I'm still really kind of interested in gratitude and appreciation. And then as you were talking to about the questions, we should popcorn some ideas around some of these questions to have some lists readily available for our listeners. Popcorning these ideas can be really helpful because it gives multiple perspectives. And that's the beauty of coaching, when you can collaboratively popcorn with one another without pressure. So maybe, let's see, should we popcorn around what brings you gratitude? Who brings you gratitude? How do you want to share that? because I don't know if we'll have time for all of them, but is there one that you think we would be able to popcorn on? What do you appreciate in your life right now?
Yeah,
Who do you appreciate?
I'm leaning towards the what brings you gratitude, who brings you gratitude, because I actually am kind of stuck on those two, having difficulty kind of getting my thoughts around how I would articulate that. So when I think what brings you gratitude, so I'd love to popcorn around those. And
Okay,
then,
yeah.
yeah, and who brings you gratitude? Because those two, I don't know why it is, maybe because I don't think in those terms, but I'm just thinking it might help just to, popcorn some ideas on those two. How about you, Erin? What's
Awesome.
coming up for you on those questions?
I think that would be helpful for
Mm-hmm.
me as well. So let's go with those two. And I think this is a good example of how you can do this in a coaching session, but also how the section is about action because it's helping you to brainstorm and then actually take action around gratitude and appreciation. So and maybe we'll just keep this as one question, what and who brings you gratitude?
Mm-hmm.
So for me right now, it's beautiful spaces. I've kind of brought that up a little bit, but so that's one for me.
For
What about you,
me,
LaShawn?
it's, kindness. When I see people showing kindness or being kind, that really brings gratitude. For me, I feel like telling them, thank you for being kind, or I appreciate your kindness. Just like grace and kindness. Anytime somebody gives me grace or I see someone else giving another person grace, that really brings gratitude. So I see those as two things. Kindness and grace is the what, and the who are the people who are embodying that.
Mm,
How about you, Erin?
nice. I would add humor or some kind of lightness can bring me gratitude in that way. Spirituality can bring me gratitude in different ways. And then for the who in these areas, I often talk about my husband, my two kids, and I think those are immediate people in my life that bring me gratitude. But then also just all of the people that I see in our local community who are helping other people and are so positive. There's just so many of them. So I would definitely add them to the list as well.
Things that bring me gratitude are just kind of going to what you said about people who help in the community, but just whenever I see someone pick up trash on the street and put it in and just they're contributing to maintaining the cleanliness and beauty of our community. And that brings me gratitude. So, and the people who bring me gratitude are just the service workers. Like I spend a lot of time because my mother has health issues. I spend a lot of time in hospitals. And so I always feel gratitude for the nurses and the technicians and the doctors and the receptionists, everyone in the hospital. I just feel immense gratitude for them because of what they do and how hard their job can be and how they show up every day and they do their job. And not all of them show that intensity and that challenge when they're interacting with me and my mom. They're there, they're present, and they're kind, going back to the kindness and the grace. So I would say people in service definitely bring gratitude.
Yeah, so going back to the service workers, I love that. And just all the firefighters recently and always, and first responders, everyone, police, all of them who have such difficult jobs and do that continuously. There's a lot of gratitude there. And as well as I think for the free thinkers and the people that push our thinking and our ability to create and love to the next level. So those are artists and, intellectuals, all of them. I'm so, so grateful for, as well as when I think of the what, going back to the what that I'm grateful for, I'm just like when I'm in nature, like I am personally grateful to have so many opportunities to be in nature and in so many beautiful ways. But I also appreciate as well urban spaces too. So and I said appreciate, right? So it's interesting how I switched my language there. So I'm also grateful for urban spaces and open spaces, natural spaces, etc. And then music for me, I am so grateful for the colorful options when it comes to music in terms of it's not just one genre. There's a lot of really good musicians out there that I'm grateful they share their time and voices and instrumental capabilities with us. So yeah, a lot of gratitude for just different groups of people and what they share with the world.
I love that you brought in appreciation because I do feel like where appreciation is showing up is, with art and because you think about urban spaces and nature, those are things that we appreciate, but they're not necessarily things that we're going to like voice to them. Like we might have a sense of reverence and awe when we are beholding a beautiful piece of artwork or listening to really impactful piece of music or song. But we wouldn't necessarily, unless we like met the artist, we wouldn't necessarily we would necessarily express that because it does go back to what you were saying, Eryn, earlier about how gratitude is more of something that you share more, you express more with others. So it's interesting that appreciation came up when you were talking about natural spaces and urban spaces and art and music. So that was an interesting distinction between gratitude and appreciation. I noticed that we were talking a lot about people and the behaviors of people and things that are very human centered, like grace, kindness, service. Those things are human, and I think that we could say they're also embodied in animals as well. And I think that that's really interesting too, where gratitude is coming up, where we're popcorning those ideas and where we're thinking about gratitude. It has a lot to do with interpersonal things, interacting with others, community, helping others. And then when appreciation comes up, it's more having to do with beauty and music and art and those type of things. So that's really interesting. I share that observation. For me, that brings some clarity in the distinction between gratitude and appreciation. It's becoming more clear to me, the distinction between the two. Appreciation is more of a kind of a feeling that arises when you are experiencing feelings of reverence and awe and, acknowledging beauty, things like that. But gratitude is coming up for me, at least, where it comes to things that people do intentionally or, that people have more like volition. It's something that's like coming from them either through service or kindness or that kind of thing. So that's what's coming up for me in terms of like the distinction between appreciation and gratitude. What's coming
Well, that
up for
makes me
you, Eryn?
wonder real quickly. Well,
Yeah.
it just makes me wonder about maybe that's why appreciation is just more natural. Usually
Mhm.
comes more naturally
Mhm.
because it just flows with that reverence or when we see something or listen to something. And gratitude is a little more active and intentional. So it is maybe a little bit more of a more of a habit to get into in some ways. And so maybe there is this like, okay, I can at least start with appreciation and build to more gratitude as well. So that was what was coming up for me there too. And I appreciate that you pointed that out and like the shift in our list and what I was talking about with nature and music and just that appreciation of that. And then I guess the other thing too is just this last question, maybe we could popcorn on real quickly, or at least have a conversation about. But since this is the ACT section and just really helping people start to use these tools and resources in the journal, it asks, what is something you can add to your week to embody gratitude and appreciation? So it doesn't have to be something extreme, but something small. So I don't know if we should try to popcorn ideas around that or just have a conversation about that. But what can be added to your week to embody gratitude and appreciation?
Yeah, I mean, I think things that are coming up for me with this question, and something that I've really been kind of ruminating on throughout this conversation, is the word embody, and what does that look like, and what does that mean, and how can I capture that through my week. One thing that comes to mind is, for me, just the nature of things now in my work life are very much focusing on finding solutions to various problems. And one thing that that can do for me in my mindset is, you know, alert me to things that are going wrong. And I think one thing that I can do to embody gratitude and appreciation is just counter that with asking the question, what do I appreciate in this moment? Or what am I grateful for in this moment? So that moment to moment, I can balance out that feeling of I've got to fix this and fix that, to what do I appreciate about this moment, or what do I value about this moment, or what am I grateful for in this moment? Am I grateful for the people that I have, you know, who are working with me towards the solution? Am I grateful for the fact that I can work on a solution? You know, that kind of thing. So just kind of balancing out my day with those two questions. How about you, Erin?
I like that a lot. And I wrote down your two questions because I might use them as well this upcoming week.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me too, maybe like, what am I learning? And just leave it wide open like that, because it doesn't have to be positive. I could also be getting more information in this moment about something I need to improve on, or something I'm seeing in the situation that is not going to be a good fit, and that
Mm-hmm.
I need to kind of, step away from, or, there's so many different angles, and like kind of it takes a little bit of that pressure, and just to say, whatever is happening, I'm grateful for what I am learning. So what am I learning in this moment, kind of thing, which ties directly back to my values. And values are such a big, part of coaching, and a big part of our conversations. But it made me realize that, when I said, what am I learning? Well, of course, that's going to be helpful to me specifically because love of learning is in my top 5 strengths from
Mm-hmm.
Clifton Strengths. It's also in my VIA Strengths Assessment. It's in my top there. And so if I can enjoy, not even enjoy, but embody that love of learning, I don't have to always be right. I don't have to get it right, or have this certain outcome maybe, but it might help me be able to open myself up to more appreciation and gratitude maybe. And so, yeah, I'm thinking through that right now as I say, maybe that could help me this week. Maybe I could try that. And, in coaching, if I would say like maybe I could try that, if I, as a client, say that, the coach might come back and help me process that more. And we would popcorn some more, think through other avenues and feel into other avenues, and really just see what could be a good option. And then that's what I love about coaching, because it's like by the time you get through all the brainstorming, the first concept that you thought was such a good idea is actually not the best option. And it's finally, oh, this is how I want to use this strategy in my week next week. So yeah. But I think for me at this point, it's around that what am I learning concept, maybe.
I like that you brought in what am I learning? And you also tied that to your strengths, and you also tied that to something that, that you enjoy, or that's something that really speaks to your values. And that made me think about how our listeners can apply this embodiment to something that evokes feelings of appreciation and gratitude just in your life. So one thing that I thought about is something that just automatically evokes gratitude or appreciation for me is looking at beautiful things, going out in nature. That to me evokes gratitude and appreciation. If I go on a walk and I look at the Flatirons, or I look at a beautiful sunset, I just am in awe and appreciation for the world that we live in, just by doing that action. So one way that I can embody gratitude and appreciation is do more things that evoke that naturally. That it's not forced, that it's not something I have to go out and actively kind of, pep myself up for, but just by stepping out into the day and just sitting underneath a tree, or, I have a lot of our neighborhood, we have a lot of bunny rabbits that just seeing a bunny rabbit, or stepping out and looking at the flat irons, or while I'm driving, just looking at the beauty of the natural spaces as I drive by. I think just turning my focus to those things that already evoke in me a sense of appreciation, awe, reverence, and gratitude. The more I do that, the more I'm going to embody those two things. So appreciation and gratitude. So those are the things that's what's coming up for me.
And I love the activeness of that. Like, okay, I'll take a step outside for a minute, or, I don't know, just like being in your body in that way. And I really like that idea. So I think that might lead to our call to action for today's prompt. And I think the main takeaway I have today is the same that I had when we first started talking about gratitude, and how scared I was of it in a way, in terms of making it more of a practice, because it always felt forced, right? Like it wasn't, so spend some time talking this out with someone for maybe even an hour. And maybe it's just talking into your phone what your individual thoughts are on gratitude and appreciation. And that might help lead to some clarity on what that means for how you want to embody these concepts moving forward.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I'm going back to that word embody, and my call to action to our listeners is to also take the time to define what that looks like for you. Embody is not a word that we use in everyday language. I think that is a very kind of coaching term, and it can be kind of metaphorical, and it can be a challenge to wrap your head around the idea of embody. What do we mean when we say embody? I encourage you to look it up in the dictionary, play with it, figure out what that means to you, and then take the next step in how you can bring that into your day-to-day activity. So first, define embodiment for you. What does it mean to embody these concepts of gratitude and appreciation? And then I would then take it to that last question, which is, what is something you can add to your week to embody gratitude and appreciation? And I would even take it from week to your day. It doesn't have to be the week. It could be just a day where you think about, this is what embody means to me, and this is how I'm going to take a baby step to include it in my activities in this moment or in this day. Thanks for joining us for Coaching as Benevolence. I'm LaShawn with Mayshell's Sage Place, Positive Intelligence Coaching.
And I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings, Grief and Loss Coaching.
Have a benevolent day.